there may be you can expect as many sockets as you saw in Draenor, and maybe a little bit more. And we'll try and make sure that we do have gems on certain kind of high visibility deterministic places, gem slots. For example, crafters, crafted rings and crafted necks all have guaranteed gem slots on them. So if you are a jewel crafter and you're selling armor like necks and rings, you will also be making your own market for selling gems.
Cool. Next question comes from Kriana, who asked, this has been a very popular suggestion over the years, have you considered changing gathering professions to secondary?
Yes. So we consider a lot of things, and I think we have this discussion almost every expansion of like, do we want to make any super high level changes to how professions work? And we haven't pulled the switch yet, which isn't to say that we wouldn't in the future. We didn't this patch or this expansion because we already made a lot of changes. The big focus this time was one of the first questions I think you asked, which is the fantasy changes. That we're going to take crafting and we're going to push it really far into the quests and kind of content space as opposed to more of a system space that it's been in the past. But that being said, like potentially the downside there is it takes away from the power, or at least the fantasy, of miners and herbalists. I mean, that's not all that different from some of the changes we made in the garrison, or the features we released with the garrison, where you had your mine and your herb garden, and everybody could pretty much gather herbs or ore, and we had mixed response on that. So there's pros and cons to either side. I think it's something we will still consider looking at in the future.
Yeah, I definitely remember, like, I think there's something to be said for having to make that choice and that distinction on an individual character. Because thinking back to Mists of Pandaria, I had my alt druid who was an herbalist and a miner, so I would just fly him around Pandaria, picking up herbs, picking up ore as much as I could, and it was like, that gave me a really strong, solid reason to play that character.
Right.
Because most of my main characters were double crafters.
Yeah.
And it also, I think, is interesting when you actually make that choice to be a double crafter, especially in an environment where you don't get a raw benefit from the crafting professions in terms of character output.
Yep.
It's interesting to sort of say, okay, I'm going to be the person who buys stuff off the auction house, turns that into something more valuable, sells it back again on the auction house. I think there's something to be said for that sort of interaction being there.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a good point.
Cool. Question here from Verada asked, with future patches in Legion, will there be profession-specific quest lines and new patterns added?
Absolutely. Yes, we want to add more cool stuff. We already have kind of some online. We know, for example, scribes, people who have their profession as inscription, make mantis runes, which is the new consumable. If you're not aware, it's a consumable which you can use to call out a particular raid boss and say, like, you, Xavius, my guild's having trouble getting past you, or just you're the fight which takes the longest, so I'm going to use a Vantis rune on my character, and that's the one boss that I'm going to be much more effective against this week. We're going to have more raid bosses in the future, so there's an announcement. There will be more raid bosses than the ones we were shipping with 7.0, and there will be more Vantis runes, things like that. So there will be functional updates, but there will also be cool opportunities as there are new dungeons and world content and raids that kind of beg out for that. Maybe we should add a cool mount here, or maybe we should add a cool profession quest line here, which really makes sense. So yes, yeah.
Awesome. Next question. We are starting to run short on time here, so hopefully we can get another couple of questions in. Sure. Question from Scaramane, who asked, are there any plans to introduce new professions in the near future, or is the focus on solidifying the existing professions?
Maybe. There's no plans right now. But it's something. It's in those same meetings we kind of talk about. Do we want to add new ones? Do we want to kind of change the way that the professions work? Do we want to combine? Do we want to separate one profession into two? And so maybe, I think if there's a good opportunity to do so, we'll look at it. What would you be interested in seeing? Send feedback or pitches for cool professions. I think that there's still room to do interesting things in the professions part of our game. Logging, I think, touched on a little bit of it in Draenor, where it was kind of a semi-gathering profession, which you could spec into in the form of a building, and it kind of lived in that expansion. So those are things that we're interested in, and yeah, love to hear more feedback on ideas.
Cool. All right, we will do one more question. This one comes from Rafe on Twitter, who asked, with the removal of the glyph system, what do you see as the function for inscription in Legion? So just to clarify, obviously the glyph system isn't gone, it's just changed fairly dramatically.
Yeah, so glyphs still exist. There are no glyphs that give you player power anymore. They were called major glyphs and minor glyphs. Now the glyphs that exist were the ones formerly known as minor glyphs, and they work differently than they had in the past. So they're applied as consumables as opposed to just a learnable skill that your character had. So in Draenor and earlier, you would buy a glyph, and then you would click it, and then you would know it forever, and you could always kind of choose to switch to that glyph if you wanted. Now, if you want to switch back and forth between my memory of glyphs isn't great. One which turns your fireball blue or one that turns your fireball purple, you would need to have a couple of each if you want to switch back and forth. I want it to be blue today. Now I want it to switch purple. I need to use another one. So as a scribe, you will be selling more of them in theory. But in addition, there's other things they can make. There are the Vantis runes I mentioned earlier. Those are made by scribes and made only by scribes. There's the tomes and codexes of the Tranquil Mind, which are used to respec your talents out in the field. So which I think will be a very popular commodity and consumable. So I think that scribes are going to do well, and they're going to be making a lot of stuff. And there's also we really wanted to dig into the fantasy of scribes, so they can make the steamy romance novel kit as well. Which is, I think, if any profession did that, would be scribes, right?
Yeah, definitely. All right, so that's about all the time we have for today. Is there anything else that you really wanted to get to that we weren't able to cover here?
No. Thank you for all the questions. I think keep giving us feedback. We're gonna keep working and kind of tuning up all the graphics and polishing all the numbers, and hopefully you enjoy playing Legion when it comes out August 30th.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for being here. Next week we are going to be back here at the same time. Same place. We will be doing a PvP Q&A with Brian Halinka. That's going to be our next Q&A. So we will get the blogs and the forum posts up together. Those questions, feel free to send them in on Twitter as well, using hashtag LegionQA. Again, that's going to be anything PvP related with Brian Halinka. So yeah, thanks again for being here, Paul.
All right.
Thanks everybody for tuning in.
All right.
We will see you guys next time.
Bye.
Alright, so basically, I'm assuming a lot of people watch videos. I hope you guys watch videos and you at least know what's going on. The big thing for this fight is we're rushing up full with ring and boss. We need to push the boss to 70% within 40 seconds. That's 138 million damage. That's on average 232k DPS from everybody, from all the DPS. Some people are obviously going to be higher, some people are going to be a little bit lower, but we need on average at least 200k DPS from everybody, all the damage dealers.
In how much time, sorry?
40 seconds to push the boss, 138 million.
So, okay, I mean, I didn't see any strat to that because our DPS is so high and we're not saving us for phase 3.
No, we're not. Like I
Is
said
that
last...
just kept it in fires?
Yep, we're only going to get one big fire. We're not going to... The 40 seconds when the Shadowfell burst comes out, we're essentially trying to mitigate not getting a Shadowfell burst at all, and getting one Doom Fire Spirit the entire phase. So 70% is when it transitions from phase 1 to phase 2. We want to try and push the boss to 70% before we get a second Doom Fire Spirit. preferably before we get a shut-up open. That's what that DPS requirement is. I am pretty faithful that we're pretty sure that we can push that. Our DPS is pretty much on par with a lot of those guilds that are doing it. So, but until we do it, it's hard for us to tell. The big thing, the bosses want to Doomfire Spirit right away, like it does on Heroic. Unless you're someone that has an execute, do not switch to it at all. You stay on the boss essentially until it gets 70%. The Hellfire Deathcaller will also come. Stay on the boss until it gets 70%. Say that one more time. Everybody stay on the boss until it gets 70%, unless you have an execute or can cleave without losing single target damage on the boss on the ads. Okay. The Doomfire Spirit should die to Chimera Shot, and it should die to Prismatic Crystal. That's it. We're going to be ringing on 0. We're going to be lusting on 0. If Dusty, if you can lust on 0, that would be fantastic.
You got it.
Lusting, potting, everything right on 0. If we ring on 0 right when we pull the boss, it should line up properly where the ring will only hit the boss. Okay? So everybody knows what Rock Chaos and Focus Chaos is on Heroic. On Mythic, it's a little bit different. It goes on everybody, as you've seen if you watched any videos. We need to basically spread out around the boss. It's specifically important for melee to spread out around the boss. You need to make sure that you're not right next to each other, and you're not hitting anybody else with Rock Chaos. So, when Rock Chaos goes out in the second phase, when you're moving, if you are in someone else's line, you want to move along your line. So, look at Exodus Raid Tools, or Big Wigs also has markers that will show you like kind of where your line is. You want to move forward and backwards along your line, not left and right. If you move left and right, you almost inevitably hit a melee, and it'll cause them to move, which will cause other people to move. So if you're standing on someone else's line, move forward or backwards along your line, so you're not messing up other people. It's that simple. The first Doomfire Spirit that comes out should die with Crystal before Ring is done. It should die before 10 seconds. And Hug, you're going to be going and picking up the fire. I'll call out when you're going to pick up the fire, okay? I basically just want to get some pulls in on this first phase to see how our DPS is, and essentially how quickly we can push this first phase. So let's just get a couple pulls in right now. Everybody should be eating. Yep.
We'll need Tester to log back in, because